Good morning.
Good morning.
Once again, another beautiful day. We are so blessed to have this library in this place to hold this event. We're so thankful for the Johan Fuss Foundation, for Julianne and her game that she has come set up and break down, for Bobby and for Sam over here who's doing the audio, and Rick from Island TV here filming these. These are filmed each week, and they're going to be on the Boca Grande History Society. You'll get a notice as soon as he gets them on that website, and then a week to 10 days later he has them on his Island TV. You can also, if you're not a member, please join, and you can go back and look at past History Bytes, and our archival has a wonderful selection of photos. Every event that's been going on in the last 5 years, at least 5-6 years, Rick has been pretty much recording. So there's a lot of information on our History Center on the web page. So please, if you haven't joined, please do think about joining. One thing I want to say about this library is this morning I was awake at 2:30, which is not unusual, but not usually thinking about what I'm going to talk about. But I was thinking, and I was driving over this morning, I thought, wow, Pansy and Tommy would be so pleased to see this library being used like this, and to see how beautiful it is, and that we've been able to restore it and keep it and make it even more beautiful. Pansy and Tommy were here from the very beginning, from when the library started. They lived on property. Pansy was the librarian, and Tommy took care of the grounds. So if you didn't know that, that's who they are, and I'd like to especially mention them today. And Julianne does the touch with the tablecloths that I told Julianne a few years ago. I said, are those Pansy's tablecloths? She said, no. I said, well, I remember Pansy always had tablecloths for anything in those days, and it goes back to Dusty's talk the other day, community. Pansy was one of those ladies that you look to. She was a staunch, very strong Baptist and in the Methodist Church also. They both melded together. It didn't matter when everybody did things together. Pansy had beautiful tablecloths, lace, overlays, yellow, blue, pink, whatever, for any function. A wedding, a shower, a celebration of life, anything that was held here, a tea party, whatever. And I love that Julianne has incorporated that, and she didn't even know that. So Pansy's still working her magic. Thanks, Julianne. We're so happy for each and every one of you to be here, and so many faces. You're my loyal subjects. And every year we seem to have a little larger crowd, and that's a blessing. And we have so many people that are so interested in history, thankfully. And today I had someone say they have something they want to share with the History Center in the future when we have this new space. Be sure to pick up, if you haven't already, a picture out here at the front. This is the new space that they're planning in the huge overall plan the Friends of the Community Center and are doing for the rebuild in the future of the Community Center. The art studio, the history, where the History Center is now, is being moved to the Crownage House. And as someone asked me a while ago, so I can explain a little bit, there's a few of our members here of the board who can probably tell you more about it later, but the History Center is completely moved out earlier because of Helene. Fortunately, because of Helene, the county pushed for us to move out. Friends had to move out, everybody had to move out. And Kim and Jim and Rosemary and Sandy Melvin and several other people jumped on board. Rick, I think, was part of it, Johnson Knight, to get and save our everything at the History Center. So we were saved, but we knew we had to move eventually anyhow. So the plan is to have the new center in the, I say the Banyan Street side of the community house, Crownage House. So it'll be, that will be the entrance. And then the two rooms on either side that some of you may not even know are there. One was a storage unit for a long time. It was called the Miss Jimmy Smith's room because she was one of our ladies from Ireland who read to the children, and we had children's programs there and all many years ago. But so that room and the room on the other side will be used for our history center. And the plan is, this is very elaborate and beautiful, but the plan is to do it as, we're working with a firm out of, I believe it's Clearwater, and I think it's Clearwater, St. Pete area, are working with designing this. And John Knight, Rosemary, Jim, Kim, and a lot of the other board have been working diligently on this project. So there will be a fundraiser letter coming out at some point, but please be sure to ask questions about this. Our sponsor this season for History Bytes is Boca Grande Charities, and that is Sandy and Robin Melvin and the board of the charities. It's quite a few different men that are on the board, and it's been a great project that Sandy put together, I think maybe 10 years ago. And we are very blessed to have Sandy be part of our history society, and he decided this year to sponsor History Bytes. So we're very grateful for that. He also, he has a tournament called Gift, Gasparilla Island Fly Fishing Tournament that's open to anyone that wants to fly fish in the fall. That money, the winnings of that are donated each year to the History Center, or it has been. It doesn't mean it always has to be, but it has been recently. And then he also does the Kids Classic. Now he's turned it over to the Chamber of Commerce, but he's still helping put that together. And that's all no charge to the kids. It's a tarpon fishing day with the captain, made fishing, games, food, and lots of fun. And that's the two main things he does. And the other thing that Sandy does is help us with our history programs that the History Center does with the Island School also. So he and Robin are very involved in our community, and we're thankful for that. Thankful for this year. I did want to mention Kimberly Bleach, our cute little bouncy blonde from U.S. Trust and Bank of America, who was here as our sponsor for about 9 years. Between the hurricanes and all the things happened, they decided that they couldn't come back to sponsor here in Boca Grande right now because they had larger venues in the Sarasota, Venice area. But she misses everyone. We got a couple notes from her saying that she missed being here. So this season, as we've been talking all this month, I can't believe this is our last one, is dedicated to Robert Edict, Bad Boy Bob, as he was called. This is the book that he wrote with the help of the University of Gainesville, Florida, in Gainesville. And he wrote this book, and it's oral histories. He realized, and he and Mark Bitts, somebody was going to read this, got together, and they were talking, and he realized that Bob needed to capture these stories. So it was in 1984 whenever William met Bob Edict, and they were researching archaeology of the Calusa Indians and the inhabitants of Charlotte Harbor. But Bob had been working on oral histories. He was very interested in finding out that, and very interested in the fishing. So as Bill Marquette began to ask Bob questions, he got thinking about it, because net fishing was going on, and that was very prevalent at that time. But things were starting to change, and the stories. Life fishing is starting to change. This is our network. This is how Boca Grande, Gasparilla Island, and the surrounding islands started from the Calusa Indians. This treasure on this coast was our plentiful seafood that was here, and a plentiful game that was actually here on these islands. Well, when you read some of these books and these stories, it started back from the Indian times, and then the inhabitants of Cayo Costa, Boca Grande, Pine Island, Boquilla, they are all fishing, and this was a way of life, and it was more people fishing than not fishing. And that was before pleasure fishing really came into in the early 1900s. Boca Grande Island also, Gasparilla Island, was founded because of its natural seaport. So this is one reason I wanted Captain Van to talk today, because our water is so important. Our lifestyle here is based on the sea, the Gulf. the heritage that we have here. We need to preserve that. And I don't want to go on too much on these things, but this book, Bob wrote. Bob passed away this past summer, and he was our archivist at the History Center from the very beginning. Over 25 years ago, History Bytes started. He was one of the founding members of that. Over 30 years, 32, 34 years, he and his wife Linda, who's here today, also worked for the History Center and did it voluntarily for the longest time. Bob was a huge advocate, and he and Sally and Ted Van Edley worked really hard to get the History Society started and founded in Boca Grande. So we owe a lot to Bob, and this book is priceless, as we know. We've talked about it in a few weeks. They're not available anymore, unless I think Linda said the other day they saw one for $4,000 on eBay, and we used to sell these at the History Center, but they're all sold out. Not for that much money. Linda has a few that Bob signed in his last days. They had a few, and he found out the prices were going up. One of his things was, he said, "Find those books, get those books, let me sign them." So the hope is that, and Linda can speak in a little bit if she wants to, the hope is that she'll be able to get an agreement with the University of Florida to help her get this book reprinted. And everyone needs to read this book. I know they have a copy at the library. There are still some for sale, maybe online. Linda has some. You can, maybe Bytes might have a few. But the original copy, the original printed soft copy is up there. You cannot take it, but you're welcome to look at any of these. And I know Dan's going to talk a little bit about some of all these things too. But Bob dedicated this book to Tom Parkinson. And if you were here last year, Carolyn Neighbor spoke, and this is Carolyn's father. And so the book was dedicated to Tom Parkinson. He's got a story all of his own. He was very well known in Boca Grande. This other, my little bookstore here, New World's Old Songs. This is a book that was written by Charles Blanchard, and he and Bob were great friends, and they worked a lot, and they were studying the Paleo Indians and the Clusa Indians, and they traveled, Charlie did, this took about 10 or 12 years to write this book. So he passed just a few weeks before Bob did, which is kind of ironic. So I'm sure they're paddling somewhere, and they're also getting oral histories. But this is a great book. I think this book is still available too. It's really interesting. This is the book we talked about all last season, and we did different excerpts from it, and we've also worked with Island School with this one. One Island, Three Hometowns. And this goes back into the beginning of time, how the island got founded, the port, the fishing industry, the fishing town at the north end of the island, Gasparilla. So this book is still available through the History Center online. I think they have it at Bytes. They also have it, I believe, downtown in the Tide. Great read. Kim, wherever she is, Kim was very much involved with Bob and Charlie in getting that book done. This is a great book about Winnins, and this book is done by Winnie Smart. This is for sale at Smart Studios. This has, because we're talking about fishing, this has a world of information also about the early 1900s and about how important our maritime history is to this community. It was then, and it's even more important now. I think I'm almost done with my commercial. I just want to say that Dusty, I was so pleased with Dusty's last week. We went out to lunch afterwards, and sometimes that's when the best stories are told, is after lunch. But Dusty was really adamant about, he didn't know if he got the point across how much community means to him and how much this community is and was and how important it is. And I think the message he was wanting to get across, and he and I talked about it a lot, was we were such a small community at that point. I had families here. We had all of us had children and grandchildren growing up here, and there was something going on all the time, from fish fries to spaghetti dinners to potlucks to the kids were doing bake sales and fundraising, and all that goes back to making sure we keep our children and our families in our community. Most of our young people now, everyone has to live off island due to the cost of living and everywhere. But we still have our island school, and hopefully we're going to get a daycare back going. And we need to keep that community feeling. And that's another thing the History Center does, is we go when we're invited, and we try to set up at least 3 sessions with the island school. And we try to go in and teach them a little bit about history. And we talk to them about getting the story, telling the story, interviewing your grandparents, interviewing your neighbors. So we're continually working in trying to keep old Boca Grande, mid Boca Grande, and the new Boca Grande alive, and keep our history and keep protecting what we have here. And just one other little thing before I get to Captain Van, he had a fishing show at one point. Let's go fishing. He made me a celebrity.
Yeah. I went to that the other day too. You caught all the fish.
I've been out fishing since I was a little kid, with my parents, and I was fortunate enough and lucky enough to fall in love with a commercial fisherman and marry a fisherman, and got to go fishing a lot, whether I was pulling the net or actually fishing for fun. And even now my son and my grandchildren all fish. I don't get to go as much as I used to, but anyhow, we still go fishing. It's still in my blood. It's my happy place to be out on the water. I don't care what it is. If it's just going down the bayou, it's a good place. And I grew up on the bayou too. But he had his show, and it had to be the coldest day of the year. It was in February. And I don't even know how we could hold a fishing rod or how to do it. I know I need 2 layers of socks on, 3 or 4 layers of clothes, jackets, and everything. But he kept saying, don't worry, Betsy. But once you start catching fish, you don't care how cold it is.
The sun came out, that helps too.
Yeah, but I think it was like 40 or 30. It was chilly, 40 something early in the morning when we went. Yeah. And then, just on the water, it's always colder anyhow. But anyhow, I'd like to turn it over to Captain Van. We're thankful that he decided to speak with us today. We're so blessed that the Boca Beacon is part of our history, and they're letting us, not only could this will be our 3rd Boca Beacon speaker this month, but they let us print articles about every other week in the paper, and they're excited for us to be part of their newspaper. There you go, Van.
Well, thank you all very much. Boca Grande, I wouldn't be me without Boca Grande. I get emotional about that. And what I want to try to share with y'all is an appreciation, a little bit of an understanding. I want you to try to understand what it was. And it was fabulous when I came down here in the late 70s and early 80s. And it's hard to even imagine how it was before that. One of the things I was reading and stuff, and something that I found in an article, I read a whole lot of different stuff, was that at one time Charlotte Harbor supported 3 or 4 different oyster production facilities. Whoa. 2 of them were in Placida. Tons of chuck oyster shipped out of here. At another time, not that far back, over half of the entire fish production for the eastern seaboard came out of Placida and Charlotte Harbor. Half of the fish for the entire eastern seaboard. We have some habitat. I'm not saying that Boca Grande and Charlotte Harbor and stuff is bad now, but it doesn't compare to when I came down here, and before that it's just hard to imagine. I have a bunch of notes I'm going to try to get to, but I want to thank some people. We're talking about Bob Eddick. When I came down here, I commercial fished and charter fished. If I had a paying trip, I took the guaranteed money. I'm a fisherman, I'm crazy, but I'm not totally stupid. After that, as I was commercial fishing, I'd take the fish there. If you had a big catch, you had to take it over to Placido, but otherwise you could take a smaller catch over here, and they handle it on the island. And got to know Tommy and of course Bob working there, and we'd catch a few pompano and stuff, and Bob actually taught me to clean pompano properly. And I didn't forget. And it's very much appreciated. We had so many other special people. My friend Bill Caldwell's here. He was instrumental in getting me down here and helping me get started fishing. And I did stuff the hard way. I tried to fit in with the locals as best I possibly could. I caught too many fish and pissed a lot of them off. But other than that, I fished wire leader up until everybody else switched. And I knew about mono a long time before I knew about wire for tarpon fishing, but I tried to not rock the boat any more than I had to. We're so blessed to have people like Betsy and the Widdens and Joyner families and all they've contributed to our fishing, fishery, and history here. It's impossible to cover everything. It'd take a week to cover half of the stories I'd like to share, but we're just so blessed. We've got Widdens around the corner here that is now formally listed for sale. I don't have an answer of how anybody in their right mind could afford to pay that and make it work, but God help us, please find some way to do it and save it, because that's the main center of our tarpon or our fishing charters around here. That's the place where they dock and work from. There's Marty and the people at Miller's do a great job, and they're fabulous and everything, but that's you know, there's 15 or 20 people working out of Widdens, and it's something to lose that we don't want to lose. Again, water quality is critical to habitat. Habitat's critical to the fishery. So we've experienced a lot of red tide this year. We've experienced a couple of hurricanes with severe floods. We had a severe wind event 2 years ago with Ian. A lot of us got flooded, including me and at our house, and boy, we thought it was bad when we got 2.5 feet. We got cleaned up in 2.5 weeks, and 2 weeks later we got 4.5 feet. We're still trying to get permits and rebuild, but you know, we're able to hang on, and I know so many of you are going through problems, and was talking to one young lady over here that said they just got their check from me, and you know, God help us on so many things, but we are blessed to be here. We have we have to be careful and watch out for red tide, but we still have a lot of good water. We have some good fishing. It's not what we were used to, but we laugh. We call it fishing, but up until about the mid-90s, it wasn't fishing. We were blessed. It was catching. We caught a lot of fish. We caught a lot of fish. I remember one day, so it's caught 185 pompano by the fishing pier. I haven't caught one there in years now. That was right around Christmas too. The mackerel fisheries, the king mackerel fisheries, just unbelievable. The amount of fish and the fish that we used to catch. The gentleman here was talking about Mitchell King, and I remember, I think it was 17 was the last time we had any good king fishing near the beach here. Mitchell and I went out one day and we caught almost 600 pounds, the two of us. And Mitchell wasn't that good at reeling them in because he was getting a little older too. But bless him, he could still steer the boat and help me, hand me the gaff when I needed it. So we had a good time and made a paycheck and some special memories. Yeah. And there were so many other special people around here. It's hard to go through it. I'm going to check through some of my notes here so I can try not to get totally unfocused and emotional. Isabel Whitten was somebody I forgot to thank that I have to, because when I came down here in '81, brought a boat down here, I needed a place to tie up and work, and we talked to her and she worked with us and we lived on the boat. sometimes a friend would let me use the shower, so I'd have a hot shower. And it just, the fishing here was so phenomenal. When we came down that day for tarpon fishing, we had time, I'd been down here enough to where I knew when I wanted to be here, so, I came down for one of the spring tides on the big moons. We timed it to get here as after the flow had already cranking. We came in the pass, we started dipping crabs and fishing, and we're fishing off of a 40-foot sport Fisherman, single engine diesel. We jumped 28 fish in 3.5 hours.
Whoa.
And we did everything we could to stay out of everybody's way, and I say jump them. We were young and full of piss and vinegar, but we had enough sense not to try to fight all of those fish. We'd get all the jumps out of them when it get to be work. We'd bend the barge back and hope they threw it out. If you broke off, you had to run the boat while the other two fished until one of us broke off. And in hindsight, I didn't make a good impression on the locals that day because they thought I was showing off, and in reality, I was a kid in a candy store with keys and eat all you want. I mean, I had died and gone to heaven. It just was unimaginable. Up in St. Pete and Tampa Bay, where I grew up, we had to work to find fish to catch. The tarpon didn't get in the pass like they used to up there, like they do down here, and it just. We did some videos, and I'm going to try to get with the folks at Boca Grande Television there to put them on there if we can. We're working on something to get some of the old videos of the 84 tarpon, the 85 tarpon tournament, World Bridge is the second one, and Miller's tournament and some of our beach fishing and stuff. I was spoiled. I knew I'd gone to heaven, and I was still here breathing.
And one of the world's richest tournaments, I was invited to fish on an all-girls team. And I was invited to fish on one of the all-girl team, and there weren't that many, a lot of women fish, but there weren't that many girls teams fishing in the world's richest. And we were invited to fish, and we jumped 17 fish in 2 days and boated 13. And we won our captain, which is all we cared about. We didn't have a lot of money invested. Everybody else did, who was funding our boat. But we were more excited about getting our captain, Bo Smith, a new truck, because his truck was falling apart. And we won the truck for him.
It's now you would be lucky to catch that the number of fish in a whole tournament than individual boats caught then, and you know, fishing mutton minnows, flying out.
Fly line.
Yeah, flying them.
That's the way Bo fished. Yeah.
Bo was awesome. We had so many awesome captains, and it took a while to fit in, but if you were respectful, most of them were respectful. We had a few challenges, but Freddie Futch was probably had a reputation of being mean and feisty, and he was a serious fisherman. But Freddie probably knew more about these tarpon than anybody else I've ever run into. There were a lot of people that knew these fish well, but he knew them better than everybody else. And I was not afraid to go poking around and looking. And on the hill tides, the big strong tides on the moon, all the crabs would flush and tarpon would go crazy, and they would work offshore and disappear. You know, they just keep going. We fished them sometimes at least 10, 12 miles offshore. Whoa. And it was nice to get away from all the boats. We were in big enough boats. We were fishing 40-foot sport fishermen then, you know, casting off the fly bridge and everything. And, you know, sea breeze didn't bother us at all. It was rough enough where the little boats couldn't bother us, so we were in heaven. Well, it was common sense that somehow those fish had to come back in at some time. And I'd poke around, and later at night out there by the dog leg and the old tripod and stuff, and finally I found those fish coming back in. And the really funny part was Freddie was already sitting there fishing. No lights. And you see the size of this basin here. It was solid, tar black bunch of fish the size of this entire space that we're sitting in here. In 20 or 30 feet of water, and you just, you caught them until they got in by the other boats and everybody, and it was pandemonium. But our day fishing, our night fishing during the tournaments, the Miss Budweiser and all these other 30, 40, 50 foot sport fish yachts were out here. We were catching fish, we were having a great time. We were entertaining clients, we were entertaining big shots from business, from politics and everything else. You could literally sit and talk to people in boats almost as close as we are here. The skill, the understanding of the tides, the winds and everything that these captains exhibited and showed, it was just, it's hard to imagine. We do have a few local tournaments left in the daytime on those outgoing tides, and there's usually 15, 20, maybe 25 boats if it's a better one, and the weather cooperates, which it doesn't always that time of the year. We've known to have a few evening thunderstorms, but if you get a chance to go out there and watch one of those, don't get in the way, but get out there and watch.
Or go fishing.
Well, or go fishing, definitely.
Good one.
But the skill and coordination, we still have some of the local captains, joiners and Widdens and Mills that are just phenomenal fishermen. Coleman's is what I was thinking of, excuse me. And it's a dream come true. It's fishing done right. The neat thing about Boca Grande pass fishing in particular is the old timers through generations, and common sense was necessary to survive here then. You couldn't, whatever, I don't want to get in trouble, but if you didn't have common sense and the brain working, you just couldn't survive here then, because it just wasn't like that. It was a real world. And they came up with the inboard style of fishing. Of course, it was before outboard, and they started off with rowboats. And sometimes I wish we'd go back to that. I don't think that's likely to happen, but they figured out how to fish the fish, catch the fish, not harass the fish, how to release them so that they didn't hurt them. They had their wire leaders and their needle eye hooks, and you get the fish up by the boat, let the customer look at it, take pictures and everything. You grab the leader, you pull it up, let it down, get a little slack and pop it, and the fish come right off. Needle eye hook's gonna fall right out of his mouth. It just was the way it's supposed to be. And then people came along with other things and made it a lot different. I'll just leave it at that. Let me go through a few of my notes here to make sure I don't forget some things. Until recently, folks moved here to get away from crowds, and that's more the area than just Boca Grande and congestion. Now progress has invaded our area. Out here on Boca Grande, you've managed to safeguard some of our heritage. Unfortunately, even that's at risk today. Widdens Marina's for sale. Eldred's at the Causeway entrance is for sale. The fishery property, that was our fish house and marine waterways, waterfront, is up for development. Boca Grande North was Coal Island Campground, where Bob and his family first settled, and a lot of other people that couldn't afford to live out here. You could catch enough fresh fish from shore there to feed yourself. You didn't have to worry about going to Hudson's or anything to buy meat. You could go literally off the shore, because the docks weren't even there. Then you could go off the shore and catch plenty of snook, trout, redfish, mullet, whatever. Clams and crabs and oysters were all safe to eat then. I'll still eat crabs from around here, especially those fat stone crabs, whenever I can get them. I get the floaters, that's all I can afford, but I bet I have them. And but the clams and oysters we used to get around here were phenomenal. They were salty, they were excellent, and with the red tide being around so much, we haven't been able to get them for years, even if other things weren't a problem. Our fishery supported abundant fish, for both commercial and recreational fisheries. The quantities of fish, the water quality, the habitat was so much better, it's just hard to imagine if you didn't see it. We had Neighbors gas station, Fugates, Hudson's grocery store, Laugh-A-Lot. And if you were around for Laugh-A-Lot, you laughed a lot. It was an unbelievable experience. It was just unbelievable. I remember we had a captain that had a cabbage palm, a sable cabbage palm, jump in front of his truck going home one night. He left the truck there and walked home. And there never was a big fuss about it. Not like that anymore. Temptation and many other businesses, Miller's of course. Miller's was the base of the Tarpon Tide tournaments and a large part of our charter fleet, and Whidden's was the rest of them. Isabel again was a sweetheart, and she helped so many of us so much. If you were respectful, you were accepted as family. It wasn't blood, but you were family. And Wayne and the Colemans and Willie Mills and all the rest of them, just what a wonderful, talented bunch of fishermen. In the spring, our beachfronters headed north, the waters warmed up and the tarpon showed up in Boca Grande Pass, and it was unbelievable what it did for the local economy. We had our winter season with the beachfronters, and then we had our spring and summer tarpon fishing, and then they pretty well rolled everything up after 4th of July. Originally, the world's richest tarpon tournament was the weekend after 4th of July in order to stretch the season out a week. And back then, fish weren't harassed nearly as much. They stayed around, whatever the reason. In my opinion, they were harassed. They don't stick around as much, but we had great fishing well into July. In fact, I remember one phenomenal time when we just happened to catch everything right. When I called a friend of mine that he needed to take a boat ride, he said, "You're kidding." I said, "No, you need to take a boat ride. Let's get in the runaway and go for a boat ride." We went out there to the pass. Who was with us then? That's all right. 3 of us went out there to the pass. When we pulled up in the pass, there wasn't a boat in sight. Beautiful hill tide. Tarpon busting all over the place. Billy just shut the motors off, and we drifted. We started up at the phosphate dock, and we just drifted past the hole. And we didn't even put a line in the water that first time because we knew it was something we needed to remember, because we're never going to see it like that again. And we each caught whatever we wanted to catch. You didn't put a line in the water if you didn't want to catch a fish, because it was going to get bit. Gives me a tear, but that was a special day, and last time I saw it like that. Some of the things you want to consider is in the 80s everything started to explode down here when we got that flyby. When they got I-75 built so the people from the Tampa Bay area could get down here easy, it just it changed the island life and the whole area significantly. Before that, with 41, if you wanted to bring a family and come down to fish for the weekend, you better leave at midnight on Friday night and just get down here in time to go fishing in the morning, because if you tried to drive down Friday afternoon, it wasn't happening. I remember meeting Dick Gint when we were coming down here one time in the 70s. We blew an engine and Dick towed us down. And he was running his boat back and forth to Sarasota. He had well-craft boats, and he kept a car up there at the yacht club, and he would run his boat back and forth rather than driving back and forth. The traffic was so bad. Our water quality is impaired, and distressed compared to what it was just a few decades ago. Strong tides and heavy rains and storms, of course, make a big difference. We've had red tides about half of the time year-round since about 2017. The fish kills vary, but we've been lucky. It hasn't been devastating to our fish. They've managed to bounce back every time. I'm seeing a lot of little trout the last couple of years. I'm seeing some little redfish. I'm seeing a lot of little snook, a lot of little mangrove snapper, even baby groupers and stuff, even true black groupers and stuff. There is hope, but there's red tide been teasing us enough here recently that pray to God that it doesn't get into a big bad bloom. And one of the things we can do to try to prevent that, if it does start killing fish, is to harvest those fish to keep them from rotting and falling down and feeding the red tide and making it more intense. In the old days, we don't have a fish house, but the closest fish house now is Jug Creek. When we had the fish house at Lucida, we had as many as 4 or 5 shrimp boats there at a time. We had grouper snapper boats. We had 20, 30, 40 mullet boats, fishing mullet, trout, and redfish. Mostly mullet, but they fished mackerel and trout, redfish and stuff too. We were lucky. We used to have a shrimp boat came into Wiggins. I don't know if he's coming back or been able to come back or
Still
not.
working on his boat.
Yeah, the boat he had was in 3 pieces after Ian. So, and I mean there was miles apart, so he had to start with a whole new boat. Growth is a mixed blessing. It's great for our economy, but in fair weather in the springtime, and even already, you can see on nice weekends and holidays how intense the boat traffic is up and down the intercoastal waterway. You better have a seaworthy boat because it's challenging and can be dangerous. The wakes, the turbidity caused on the shorelines by the wakes stir up the waters and everything, and that cuts off the sunlight for our seagrasses, our necessary seagrasses, which are the habitat nurseries for most of our fish and shrimp and crabs and stuff. So I don't have an answer for that, but that's something that sooner or later we're going to have to address. I'll interject here several times that this is the best place left. We're just loving it to death. Let's try to hold on to some of our heritage and old ways. I started coming down here in the 70s. My first guided fishing experience was a neighbor saw me catching a lot of fish all the time, and he said, "Look, I've got a girlfriend that, she's coming over from California, and I want to impress her and catch her a tarpon. Will you take us down to Boca Grande and guide us and catch her a tarpon so, I can make a big hit on my new girlfriend?" Evander Preston from Preston Music there in St. Pete. And sometime in the mid-70s, early 70s actually. So we got this boat, came down here, and we broke down on the way, but we met Dick Ent, and that worked out good. He towed us, and he said, "Is it all right if I put this thing on a plane?" And I said, "Sure, if you've got the power." So we get to run it down here, he puts it up on a plane. I said, "What in the world have you got in this thing?" He had his fancy Scarpies and a couple of 426 Hemis. It tows the boat faster than it ever been in its life. We get down here and he puts us in the marina because he owns it, gets it in there for him to fix it up for us. God was watching out for us. We set us up in the galleon up there. Didn't take dogs. We had a Great Dane, and he still said, "Yeah, well, it's my place. If anybody says anything, tell them talk to me." The good part is, while we're waiting for the boat for a couple of days, he says, "You got to go down to Ski Alley and try the snook fishing. It's just phenomenal." I said, "Sure." So I took my little spinning rod reel, a couple of Florios, and walked down there and waded along. Took my pick of what snook I wanted. You could keep 4 back then. It was like 18-inch minimum, but if they weren't 22 inches, they weren't worth killing. So You know, I carried my stringer, picked them up, picked through them till I got 4 nice fish, and then came on back about 9:30, you know. That evening when he got back from work, I said, "You want some snook for dinner?" He said, "Oh, did you catch one?" I said, "Oh, I caught plenty." You know, I mean, waiting along the edges, I could see 10, 20, 30 snook by each little snag and stuff, and each little grass patch and a bunch of fish. And, you know, this is heaven. This is where I'm supposed to be. We got the boat fixed, went down to the pass, caught some pinfish where we went down there, took my old Tampa Bay type rigs, you know, my big floating forks and stuff, slide forks, and we caught and fly lined a few pinfish. We caught 2 or 3 nice tarpon and 2 trips down there. We caught 1 or 2 each trip, so everybody was happy. We were running back and forth. It was a beautiful ride from Stump Pass and Englewood Beach. Got to come down here a few times later. Got to come down with Billy and friends and fish with Thomas Lowe. Another island woman with his boat. Another great old fisherman, old fishing family. Most of the fishermen, most of the tarpon guides, guided tarpon in the summer, fished mullet in the fall, and whatever they could in the spring. You know, commercial fish, mackerel, pompano, whatever. All the restaurants had fresh local fish. They do the best they can. They got the best I've seen anywhere. I don't know how they get it, but I'm not complaining. It's good. It's just, again, it's not like this is bad. Don't misunderstand me. But I wish you could see what it was and what it could be again if we can figure out ways to improve our water quality. And I do want to give credit to Gasparilla Island Water. They have advanced wastewater treatment out there as of a month or so ago. As of about a month ago, they've updated everything to way past the standards everybody else is. So, you know, Boca Grande in particular is having the least impact they can, and y'all are being smart out here, and it is noticed and appreciated. But there's a whole lot of growth all around us that isn't being mitigated, and the infrastructure isn't keeping up. Charlotte County is trying to do stuff. Charlotte County's working on improved wastewater treatment for the West County. That's in permitting and design right now, but it'll be a year, 2, 3 years before they can get anything going. And with the population explosions up the whole harbor, it's a concern. And I'm not saying that people cause red tide, because I'm clear that red tide has been around forever. You know, literally even in the Bible, okay, it's not something new. But when you look at the red tide outbreaks and you look and see that it's directly off of the populated areas, it's not rocket science to me that we are a factor. You get north of Tarpon Springs, they very rarely ever have it up there. They've got all the marshland. They've been forced to update their sewage wastewater treatment, their rain runoff and everything. They've got the wetlands, they've got the grass flats up there, and their water quality is better, and all in all, their fishing is better. We can bring things back, but if we don't take care of the water, the habitat, it's not going to get better. Is there anybody that has any questions about anything? Because there's plenty of stuff I can find to talk about.
I was going to talk a little bit more about Millers and the dock there and the tarpon tide tournaments.
Okay, that's a great thing to talk
There's a
about.
lot to talk about there.
I moved down here for the season in '81. We put together a team to fish the last of the tarpon tide tournaments that year. We scraped up the money to enter and fish it. And the tide tournaments were a really, really big deal. They were a social event like you can't imagine. Jack Harper had the Calcutta the night before the tournament upstairs there at Miller's Restaurant. And it was definitely standing room only. And it was more fun than you're allowed to have anymore. The deal with the Calcuttas was they put your boat up for bid, and whatever was bid went into the pot, and if somebody else bought your boat in the Calcutta, they got half of the prize money. They got the Calcutta prize money. So there was stiff competition, and there was people that were known to jack you up, because if you wanted your boat, they were going to make you pay for it. And there was adult beverages consumed to the max.
Was there about 6 of those, or?
There was at least, there's an average of about 6 a year. They would usually be the last 2 weeks of May and all through June, I think.
I think they went the first year only, they had one, and then
Yeah.
they had two,
Yeah,
and then they
grew.
started having
Yeah.
one more.
I remember very well the 86 year though. I had a nice little Morgan and got out there, and we got lucky and won 2 out of the 4.
All right.
And I'll let you have a second
No, I'm
here.
just gonna-
But and I got to give thanks to my friend Billy here, because in the second one we won, there was a school of tarpon. As the tide gets high, the fish would start to move out. They would bunch up real tight, and they'd start to move out to make their practice spawning runs. And this bunch would start to move out, and a few of us knew what we were doing and recognized it. And I slipped out there waiting for them, and I was in just the right spot. And another friend of mine right over here was slipping out there, and he was real close. He was close enough where he could have reached them with no problem. But he knew that I was there first, and he was a gentleman, and he went like this. I cast out there, we hooked up the winning fish, and I went, thank the Lord. And that fish was hooked with just a little tiny bit of skin, and we could see that. We got him over on the bar. We're waiting. There's a time where you had to be back at a certain
Just
time.
coming around that point, tell that, was
Yeah.
exciting, that was excitement.
And we finally got it gaffed. I didn't take any chances. I ran both arms through the gills. I was scratched up and abused. I was a mess. But for $18,000, that was a lot of money. That fish wasn't getting loose. And Mark Futch had about an 85-pound fish weighed in, and we come flying around. You had to be in past Miller's buoy there at 1 o'clock, I think, or whatever the time was. And we come through there with 2 or 3 minutes to spare. And a friend of mine I'd asked for a name for the boat, and he said, how about just in time? And so the first tournament we fished, we came in just in time. And Mark was not happy to see us with that fish. But those were really nice tournaments that you were only allowed to weigh 1 fish. The big prize money was for the first fish, first place and second place, but they had the most releases. And there were frequently only 1 or 2 fish killed in those tournaments. And in the early days, we did kill fish and bring them into mount, and hundreds, if not thousands, of fish went through Hudson's, went through Tommy Parkinson's, there at the fish house, and the waterfront. But we learned, we grew, we decided that the Boca Grande guys got together and pushed through a deal to put the tarpon tag into where you had to pay $50 to kill one, and it's evolved now to where you can only get 1 tag a year, and for a world record, and you're not supposed to kill one otherwise, which is great. The tournaments, even the World Bridges and stuff, and the local tournaments evolved to the most releases instead of the biggest fish. And that was not really good for numbers of people fishing the tournament, because being able to get lucky and catch the biggest fish gave an amateur much better odds than catching the most fish. But it was the excitement, the adrenaline out there fishing the tournaments, and hooking up a big one and your excitement of the people in your party. I watched one of the tournaments that we had videoed a couple times last week thinking about this, and watched the excitement on their faces, weighing the fish and everything. The moments to be cherished. You know, the most releases and everything is still fun. The World's Richest is still a great opportunity to participate in some good fishing and with some great guides. And you better be good and not make many mistakes when you're fishing for the most releases, though, having the most fish. There was something you wanted to say,
Well, I
ma'am?
want to talk about coming around the
Yeah.
buoy. And the other thing is, some of those tournaments were won by ounces.
Well, that 81 tournament we were talking about, that I was talking about, the first one we fished, that Freddie Futch and a fellow named Rob Wells came in with a nice fish, and Jack weighed him on this bouncy scale and came up with a weight, and we came in and he put ours on the bouncy scale and he called ours a pound smaller. I said, how about putting them on a balance beam? Nope, my word's final. But Rob Wells, bless him, we lost him this last year. He fell out of Cabbage Key, and throughout Cabbage Key, that fish on the wall out there is what cost us that tournament. But there's good memories, and we just, I can't emphasize how blessed we are to be here, but I can't impress upon you anymore. And it's so important we try to figure out a way to do what we can to continue to do more and more to protect what we have, to try to bring back as much as we can of what we had. And God bless y'all for putting up with me and coming out here. We sure appreciate it.
I'm sure we have questions. Anybody have questions?
Yes, sir.
Well, I see you guys fly around these mangroves in the back bays.
You don't see me doing that.
Oh, no. What effect have these last two hurricanes had on the passages that you guys have embedded in your brain about how to get from Bull Bay to...
The question was about how did
impact on the passageways.
the hurricane floods impact the backcountry passageways. It affected the passes, like Milton Pass, a lot more than it did the backcountry. But even around the causeway and other places, you'll notice the closer to the passes you were, the more sand was deposited in there, the bigger the bars, the higher. And I was running around by Boca North yesterday looking around, and that beautiful grass patch is all sand right now because it got covered completely by the sand. As when that water starts to slow down in that shallow water, the larger particulates of sand filter out quicker, and but it wasn't as bad in the backcountry. Somebody else has to have a question. Don't be scared. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any hot fishing reports to share?
Yes, I do have a few very good hot fishing reports to share. As this water begins to clear up, if Mr. Red Tide doesn't come back and bother us, the Spanish mackerel were starting to show up last week. And if you want to catch a mess of fish to eat, have fun, trolling spoons or casting jigs and stuff is a phenomenal way to catch a bunch of fish. They have a 15 fish bag limit. They're the only fish out there that you can keep more than you can eat. And I don't recommend that you necessarily do that, but you know, because they're great fresh, fried, smoked, ceviche, whatever you want, but you know, use plenty of ice and take good care of them. As I mentioned earlier, I'm seeing a lot of speckled trout. Most of them are small, but the water's all stirred up right now again. Every time it settles out, we find them, and then it gets stirred up, and then we gotta go hunt around and find them again, so it takes a little time. But the speckled trout are looking great. Snook, I believe, opens the first. We're up. We've got 9 different zones to try to keep track of now for snook, and I don't even remember how many for redfish, but we do have some redfish coming back. Nothing like we used to have, but definitely we have some redfish coming back. Sheephead are abundant right now. Every now and then we find some whiting and some pompano And like I said, we did have a nice, we were fishing for pompano and caught a nice permit yesterday. But, so there definitely is some hope on fishing, and as soon as this water warms up just a little bit more, it won't be very long before you'll see some tarpon.
Could you compare the fishing at Boca Grande with Homosassa?
Totally different fisheries. There is a fly fishing fishery around Boca Grande, but that's getting harder and harder, next to impossible, because of so many people. There's so many guides fishing, about half of them from somewhere other than here, and they're making it very hard on the fly fishermen. Fly fishermen need happy fish that are not scared. They have to be totally happy to pull up on them and sneak up on them and present a fly to them, and it's much harder. The fishery at Homosassa was a shallow water fishery, and the Pine Island Sound is most of our shallow water fishery, and the pass fishing and everything is just totally different. And you can hook the fish around the pass or around the beaches, but landing tarpon on fly gear in deep water is work.
Anyone else have a question for Captain Van?
Somebody over here had one. Yes, ma'am.
I just noticed when the two of you were sitting there and talking back and forth, you almost have your own language.
You haven't heard the best of it.
Or the worst of it?
And it's really delightful. And I was wondering if anyone has ever written a dictionary or glossary of fish words, because I mean,
Now, there's a history Bytes teacher. That's an excellent suggestion, and the names of the places in the backcountry
Yeah.
would fit into that nicely. You know, the home stop.
That's a great one. We'll have to work on that one.
This, that, and the other.
Sandy Melvin did
That's a great idea.
Sandy Melvin did a history bite some years back that we do have recorded, I believe, about the names of the boats and how they became the names of the different boats.
Yeah.
He did it on Morgan's, but he did it on the boats in the past at that time. It's probably been 7 or 8 years ago, but that was a great one. He and I talked about him maybe bringing that one back again.
And one other thing I'd like to add, I wrote an article I think they're going to do in the Gasparilla magazine in this next issue, and try to acknowledge most of the names of the old Boca Grande past captains and some of the fairly new ones. I was talking with Charlie Coleman a little while back, one of the better fishermen, and you know, I was talking about fishing back in '81 when I came down here. He looks at me and said, "You do realize that's when I was born."
Yeah. And I was fortunate, I say, to grow up through the ranks with my grandfather, Jerome Fugate, worked with the captains. I didn't know him very well, but my father did also. And so I have it on both sides, and I really appreciate that heritage that my uncle and father and grandfather all worked in the retail part, and they promoted some of the first tournaments back in the 30s. And my grandfather took care of the reels and strung the lines, marked the lines, and my Uncle Jerry did that too before Captain Bill actually got here. Billy Hadcock. But so, I mean, at Fugates, I mean, it was all about the tarpon fishing coming to town and getting everything ready and getting your hats and your sunscreen and your clothes ready for that, and grew up that way. And then at the Pink Elephant, it was all about the fishermen, and it didn't always have to be tarpon fishing. I mean, like he said, and there's so much fishing, and the back bay fishing is so important and so much fun, and it's when you can really enjoy the beauty of the mangroves and the birds and the wildlife. And I'm going to let Linda Edick say something, but I want to say too, Captain Van is an active charter captain.
Semi-active.
Not only is he a writer, but he's that, and he also he take a kid fishing. And I think that's a real important thing. And I think we all should take our kids fishing and teach them the rules of the road about caring for the water, caring for taking care of the fish and our wildlife.
And one more quick thing. You were mentioning the snook and red fishing and trout fishing and everything. When I came down here, nobody knew what whitebait was. There was 2 brothers and a crazy old man that's barely still alive over there in Bokelia that knew what whitebait was. But there was nobody around here that had a clue as to what whitebait fishing was. You never had a chum bait. You You just, you know, to catch bait before you trip, you just stop anywhere you wanted, throw one time, fill up the well. Scott Moore came down in '83 and started whitebait fishing, and the stories got around and everybody's caught on, and it isn't the only way to fish, but it is the easiest way to catch fish.
And I do, before I get over here to Linda, I want to mention, yep, she's still there. We talked about Freddie Futch a little bit. One of his daughters, Marvine, is here. She caught a few fish on her dad's boat. We're real fortunate to have Marvine on our board, and also John's Knight, who's another 5th or 6th generation Boca Grandite. So we're very fortunate to have a lot of locals still working in our community.
I have a question. You call it the world's richest. Call it the world's richest tarpon tournament. Is that true?
It was, I don't know if it is now or not, but
When you say richest, is it money-wise, or do you mean?
money-wise at first, because that was a marketing tool. The first one was like '84, and the Boca Grande Club put them on, and then it switched to the chamber and everything. But with the entry fees and everything, the prize money was as much as $250,000. I know one captain that took home $250,000 from one of the tournaments.
And what would you say it is today?
I have no idea.
It's
There's less boats.
Yeah.
The entry fee is higher. There's less boats, but you know, I have no idea.
It was a maximum of 60 boats at that
Yeah.
time, and I think it started out $5,000 entry fee, then it went up to like 7,000. I think it might be 75 or
And
more
then
that
with the
now.
Calcutta and everything.
And then
too,
with
so-
Calcutta went on, it was a 2-day tournament, but as we said, it was a marketing tool. That's when Boca Grande Club was just being built, and they put it as invitational. And so back in those days in the 80s, there was a lot of money, a lot of gambling money. People, big business people came for the challenge to fish.
And first place was $100,000,
Yeah.
and that was a good advertising tool.
And then when you said the captain took home, some captains took home money. Some captains just got their fee for charter. But most of the people negotiated with their captains, so everybody was anxious to get in that tournament. And that was the first, second, and most releases tournament at that time. Now it's run by the chamber, and we haven't had 60 boats in a long time. Those days were the days when he's talking, when Billers was hot, when everybody, it was all marinas, and the boats were anywhere from 25 feet to 62 feet probably that were fishing. It was big. It was a big company deal too. A big
corporate deal. Miss Budweiser, bankers, all kinds of big fancy yachts.
Pfizer Corporation probably. There was a lot of people that fished down here. Well, I want to. Linda has a few words she wants to say. So.
Thank you. Hi, man. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there just like you are.
My husband's book, we came down here first in 1978. He had just graduated college with a degree in archaeology and anthropology. So we found this island and fell in love with it. We had a business up north. So in 1978, we stayed for 2 weeks at Coal Island, which was a campsite. We came back in 1979 and stayed for 2 months. And in 1980, we moved here completely. Bob got a job with Tommy Parkinson at the Fish House. Betsy forgot to tell you that. He worked at the Fish House and we lived upstairs. And the fishermen would come and go all day and all night.
When you came in with a catch of fish, you had to come down and help
That's
the weigh.
right. We had to come down and weigh them and ice them and put them away. So
Yes, ma'am.
he was up at least 3 times a night, if not more. I didn't mind the commercial fishermen so much because they had small boats and pulled up to the dock. But those tarpon fishermen, they came in with their spotlights and shined it right on our bed. You know, that was not good. And you were probably one of them.
No, I was considerate. I like Bob, he liked me.
But I just wanted to say that, and if you want to look at his book, it's up here. This is the first copy, and it's soft cover, 1996. And the hardcover was printed, I think, 3 years later. But I also wanted to say to you, Van, you throw the best Super Bowl parties I've ever been to. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to see about getting one of those books too.
Thank you all so much. This has been a wonderful season, and we've certainly had beautiful weather every time. Next year, let's hope, pray, no more storms. Our History Center will be open. If not fully open, it will be open. The community center will be open. Our town will be open more than it is. But thank you all for coming. And anybody has any suggestions for next season? I've already got a couple. We're always interested in taking them. You did not have to grow up in Boca Grande. You did not have to come in the 80s. You could have come in 2010. Or you could have, a lot of people came, we don't have as many now, but we had a few that families came here on the train. So we're looking for your story. And as I say, that was one of Bob's things, was tell your story, capture those stories. And the History Center and all of us want to do that. So thank you for coming. Please view the website on Island TV and the History Center. Thank you.